The biggest problem isn't that we go into fight or flight, it's that we never go out of fight or flight. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey everybody, welcome. Today we're going to dive right in. We're going to talk about what Thoughtwork is. Thoughtwork is one of the ways that we change our neural pathways when we're doing the work of Connect Method Parenting. I do it specifically a certain way where we use a tool called STEAR, and then we expand that tool into Daily Peace. I explain it here on the podcast. I've explained what that tool looks like in my book. You can go check those out, or you can also just dive into League at some point in the future and use our amazing app that my husband built for everyone in League that walks you right through it. But bottom line is, Thoughtwork is powerful. It helps you become aware of your thoughts, which is vital if you want to change your thoughts, because you can't shift something. You literally can't shift something if you aren't aware of it. And today I want to help you understand what Thoughtwork is and how to start using it if you aren't already using it to up-level the way you parent. And if you are already working with me in one of my programs, listen to this podcast episode anyway, because I'm going to explain it perhaps in a way that is unique and different and might help it land for you in a way that up-levels your ability to use STEAR and use Daily Peace. Because parents who are ready for this kind of change, who are ready to do Connect Method Parenting, soon realize that it is who you are being, not what you are doing. You're a human being, not a human doing. And who you are being is what matters with your parenting. Because someone could give you all of the things to say, and they could tell you how even developmental psychology works and the developmental process of children and adults and humans in general, and you would still probably mess it up if you didn't understand how to get who you are being and how you are feeling aligned to the highest, most loving version of yourself. And I have to tell you, we've been on this trip with my kiddos. We are exactly 3 months in, or I think yesterday we're 3 months in. And what's so fascinating is all of the dynamics that are happening. I feel as though they're condensed because we are with each other 24/7. And the realities of being in different places. I don't speak our language, the culture is very different, but also being in a situation where some of my very social kids are not able to have that social interaction and the impact that's having. It's just the perfect environment for me to use all of the things that I've collected over the years and to realize the importance of who I am being. Who I am being matters. And so if I'm out of alignment, one of my kids says something, and I'm aware of resistance, maybe defensiveness, maybe a little bit of triggering, I have to stop myself. And I have done really well with it, but this is because I've had 15 years of experience doing it, 15 plus years of experience doing this, and it's been pretty good. But there have been a couple of times where I've had to leave the room and just take some time and really do my own process, my daily peace process, to get me in a place where I can show up as a person I want to be. And that's why I want to talk to you about it, because there is always another level of emotional maturity that we can get to as a parent. And as our kids are growing, and I have some that are adults now, I have some that are teenagers. I don't have any littles anymore. I remember that stage, and I grew and developed so much when they're little, have lots to say about that. I love helping parents that are still in that place. And everything we learn along the path, all of the thought work we do compounds. So who we are being matters more than what we are doing, because that is what is going to allow you to stay as the parent that you respect, no matter how your child is acting. And there's been some things that have been said, just normal teenager stuff that I find myself thinking, okay, am I ready to say something? Do I need to wait? What do I even want to say? And I do my own work to get myself in the place. Okay, little unexpected side note there, but hopefully that helps you to realize that this work is so vital, because if you just listen to people tell you what to do, It might work some of the time, probably will, but it's not going to leave you feeling full of resources, full of your own capacity to show up the way you want to, or to repair if you mess up. So I have always loved self-help. I'm a pretty driven person. I remember when I was younger, and this sometimes still happens, where I would wish I didn't have to sleep because I had just so much I wanted to do, so much I wanted to learn, so many things I wanted to develop. So I'm driven. I want to be better. I had to work my way out of perfectionistic thinking because of how driven I am. That's where my brain led me to. And the thing that, really landed me to where I'm ultimately having this conversation with you right now is because with parenting, I was stumped. I was tripping all over myself and my emotions, and my nervous system was trying to protect me, and it wasn't allowing me to be the parent I wanted to be. And I was able to eventually, about 8 years in, dive in to my natural tendencies to want to do better, to want to master things, to want to learn and grow. And I dove in to figure out how to be better at parenting. I would say I'm highly sensitive. By default, for whatever reason, I have a little more anxiety than the average person. If you ask my husband, he will attest to this. So I needed to learn how to regulate my life in order to make sense of it. And when I had kids, all of those tendencies inside of me that I was able to regulate and manage before I had kids came up bigger. They were magnified. So I really had to figure this out. It was why I had so much trouble in the beginning. And it's also what led to me figuring this out and creating Connect Method Parenting and teaching it to you all. So I needed to learn how to regulate my life in order to make sense of it. So whether before parenting, it was all about just excelling and being the best version I could. After parenting, it was about being a better parent, being a better human, figuring out how to hold on to myself with my kids. So reading self-help books helped me learn how to manage myself better. I love learning. I remember reading through this series that my mom had right under the encyclopedias. Do any of y'all out there remember growing up with encyclopedias? If you're 20 or 30, you probably don't have much recollection of encyclopedias. Maybe late 30s you do, depending, but we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I loved those books. I wasn't some genius that read them cover to cover and had a photographic memory. I wish I was, but I was not gifted with that. But I did thoroughly enjoy them. And this Childcraft series, I can't remember who it was by, colorful covers. And they would talk about things that were really interesting, things that we would now ask ChatGPT or Google, like how is clay made? Why does rain fall from the sky? They were organized in a way that, for a child, categorically, you could look up different things about natural sciences or about animals, about weather patterns, and find out more. And I loved it. And my mom took us to the library regularly. I grew up just loving reading. I wouldn't say I'm a fast reader, but I would say that I definitely love books. I remember going into this gigantic storage room we had downstairs and reading Choose Your Own Adventure novels and hoping that no one would find me. I loved them. And when I started my family, and then we made the decision to homeschool when my oldest was 8, I started collecting books like a fanatic would. I was fanatically collecting books. That's probably a better way to say it. And I had the most beautiful connection. I think we had 8 or 10 bookshelves, thousands of books. Shouldn't say I had to. That makes it sound very victim-y. I chose to sell most of them when we sold most of our possessions. When we sold our big home in Phoenix and moved to a little cabin in the woods, and we really made this very intentional decision. But it is probably the thing I am the most sad about are all of the books that I ended up selling. Some beautiful, beautiful books. I had old books, just classic books, so good. So I sold most of them because we were making the intentional decision to live a minimalistic life. I do have still 4 probably, or maybe even 5 bins of books down in our crawl space that I just could not part with. So I love books. I love learning. And I love listening to books. And I remember as a kid, my dad would play Zig Ziglar, he was probably one of the original self-help gurus. And my dad loved him. I loved his voice. I need to pull it up. I can't remember specifically what it sounds like, but I remember as a kid liking it and being really interested in what Zig Ziglar had to say in the car, specifically cassette tapes back in the day. Yes, I'm older than I'd like to admit, but I do have a 25-year-old, so do the math. I've got to be a certain age, right? But I love books. I looked up on our Audible account. We have 557 books in our Audible account. That is an enormous amount of books. And granted, this is maybe a decade. When did Audible come out? A long time ago. And we've been using it, and all of my kids have books that they buy on it. So we have a lot of books, but as you can tell, I love reading, and I love self-help. And I always wanted to figure out how to be the best version of myself. I remember finding Viktor Frankl when I was a fairly young mom and falling in love with his writings and all the things he was saying. It really resonated. Byron Katie, stumbled on her at some point with my kids. And as I was figuring out how to be a sensible mother, not losing my mind, Pema Chodron was a random find along the way that has some really beautiful words that help you become a better version of yourself. And I remember listening to them and feeling like it helped my nervous system regulate. So I wasn't just locked into fight or flight mode or survival mode. And everyone's faced situations in their life that don't work for them. All of us. You could call it trauma. You could call it what we, now might call a trigger. And the brain, let's face it, the brain does an incredible job trying to protect us from danger, trying to keep us alive. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in, fight or flight, comes to bat, as we like to call it. It goes into motion. And this is great because we do need to survive. This was fantastic for our ancestors hundreds of years ago because there were really legitimate threats, tigers, weather threats, famine, like things that they really needed to get up and move and get away from. And this has just been passed down to all of us. Yeah, so here we are with these nervous systems that are trying to protect us. But the problem is our kids' messy room or their bad attitude isn't life-threatening. It feels like it's life-threatening. Both of those felt life-threatening to me. They felt like a lot, but they aren't life-threatening. They might, though, legitimately be too much for us to handle in the moment because of where we are, which is completely fine. Totally fine if we get triggered. The biggest problem isn't that we go into fight or flight. It's that we never go out of fight or flight. It never resolves, meaning that the threat is over, but we don't go back into parasympathetic. We don't go back into a regulated state. We don't metabolize the fight or flight chemicals in our body. So we stay stuck in this chronic state of agitation, anxiety, dysregulation, fight or flight. So that's really what is, the problem is that we're staying stuck in it. And this is the magic of thought work. To me, thought work is part of it. I'm not going to be able to unpack all of this for you all today, but without the thought work element, the rest of the components that get us back into a regulated nervous system state don't happen. And those other components are clumped into the category of an emotional feeling state, of getting back to safety, of normalizing, of neutralizing. And, you hear me talk about that a lot. And in peace, we go through a thought heavy step, 2 thought heavy steps, thought download, then we do our unintentional steer, which gives us an awareness of how did that situation go down the way it went down? Why did I flip my lid so much when my child talked to me that way? We create this awareness around it. And then the A step, which peace is an acronym. So A is allow is what it stands for. And that's where we feel our emotions. That's where we process them and metabolize them. And I'm not going to go into that as much. I'm going to focus on the thought work today and how thought work works, because without the thought work, the feeling our emotions is a lot less potent. So we don't want to get stuck in this chronic state of agitation and dysregulation because nobody wins. So we do the work of understanding what our brain is doing, what thought is coming up. And most of the time that thought isn't subconscious. It's not a conscious thought that we're thinking of. We're not thinking, oh, I really want to, flip my lid because my kids are pushing back. Or I really think this messy bedroom is life-threatening. We know logically that's not the case, but our subconscious thought, our subconscious filter is thinking, yeah, it is. Because if that messy bedroom causes, judgment from your neighbor or from your husband, wow, you are in trouble. And that's where we go to. It's rejection and fear and worry. And there's so much at play there. So when my parenting fell apart, I started studying psychology in general, developmental psychology as it relates to children and just humans in general as well, attachment theory, CBT, which is cognitive behavior theory, somatic training. So all of this stuff with Peter Levine, so much. I just dove into everything. I returned to my anatomy and physiology studies from my nursing school career, biology, chemistry, what was happening, refreshed myself on the nervous system, all of the things. I wanted to help myself figure this whole thing out. I was trying to reverse engineer my baby powder blizzard experience where after losing my mind when my kids took the Costco size bottle of baby powder and turned my playroom into a white winter wonderland, and then I'd had this miraculous change of thinking, which changed my emotions, which regulated my nervous system, which allowed me to connect to my kids, which allowed us to get this mess cleaned up in no time, which allowed me to feel connected to my kids throughout the whole experience and for the rest of the day. The rest of the day was awesome. And I wouldn't have been able to articulate that in the moment that that's the chain of events that happened. But as I learned moving forward so much about the brain and the way the nervous system works, and I just put all the pieces together, it became crystal clear to me that that's what happened. Some reason my thought about the baby powder blizzard event changed. So I knew that I needed to become more aware of my thoughts because that was the first thing in the chain of events that allowed the baby powder blizzard to turn into a wonderful thing instead of a catastrophe, which was what my brain initially thought it was. Eventually, I found different ways of questioning my thoughts, separating the facts from my story, doing what I called a thought download. And now I've iterated on that so many times that we have a tool called STEAR that's put into a bigger process called Peace. It's a way to inspect gently our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, and ultimately see why we have the results we have in our life and how we can create different results in our life, especially with our parenting. So getting the hang of this was huge. It was this turning point for me. I learned that you can take a thought that's in your brain, evaluate it, decide whether you want to keep it, want to keep believing that thought, or if you want to keep going down that road or not. It's like, I could do that, not believe it. So I decided I could decide whether I wanted to keep the thought, keep believing it, or if I wanted to stop thinking it. I started learning that the thoughts are optional. And I began questioning myself with thoughts like, who would you be without that thought? I love that question. Who would you be without that thought? That question is so incredibly powerful. And taking one of those thoughts I was having and seeing if I could turn it around and make it the complete opposite was powerful too. So instead of thinking, well, like for example, so if I thought, oh my gosh, my child is so unkind right now. And I say, wait, what if it's also true that I'm so unkind right now because I'm judging her? I'm not having compassion. Ooh, that's a good one, right? That is interesting when you can self-confront like that. And so I started doing that work really kindly and gently. This was a couple years in because at first I would not have been able to handle that. That would have been very triggery for me. But eventually I started to really love myself and have so much compassion for myself that I could confront myself powerfully with stuff like that. So this was my introduction to thought exploration, thoughts being optional, being able to redecide what I wanted. And then I started learning about mirror neurons and how what we're thinking and feeling is literally being broadcast out to the world. I love that science is showing this. So it's not just somebody's idea, but it's proven that others are picking up on it. And that explained so much when I walk in the room and I feel somebody upset or angry, or my child's screaming or throwing a tantrum, or as a teenager, they don't scream and throw a tantrum. They're just shooting darts in their eyes sometimes at you. I can feel those emotions. This was so helpful to understand that I naturally just want to go into resonance with them, but that I have the choice not to. But I'm going to feel that tug, and then I'm going to say, ooh, let me have an emotional frequency that I'm sending out with my mirror neurons, a little broadcast, and let my child maybe get sucked into that, because that's kind of fun. But that created a whole new world for me. That opened up all of these things for me and challenged my capacity. And what's so amazing is it's possible for all of us. we can get better and better at that. Just in the same way that somebody can get better at anything. We can get better at riding a bike. We can get better at learning languages. We can get better at penmanship. We can get better at painting, all of these things, playing the piano. We're tapping into the potential that we already have inside of us and increasing our capacity to tap into that potential. That's what's possible for us. And how my emotional mood can be impacted by other people if I wasn't being intentional was powerful. Like that's big. That's big awareness. That's a big awareness. I hope you hear that. And if you've already heard me say it, I hope you hear it again and it hits you harder. There are mornings I wake up and I think to myself, okay, let's up-level this emotional capacity inside of myself. Or a situation will come up with one of my kiddos. Happened numerous times while we've been on this trip, and they'll say something and I'll feel part of me want to just go back to old self, old Andy, correct. And then part of me is like, nope, you got this. That's not going to help. Pause. Who do you want to be in this moment? If I'm thinking, well, they're being so unkind right now, I'm thinking, are you being unkind by judging them? And you go through this thought process. You start thinking in steers. It's pretty darn amazing. And then, you guys, so this is my journey. I'm unpacking it for you. Thoughts are optional. We have mirror neurons sending out emotional broadcasts to other people. And then realizing, these emotions that we have, they're the fuel to our maturation and our actions, meaning that emotions are the thing that drive our actions. Emotions are the engine to our maturation. They are the driving force to us taking more emotionally mature actions. I know you probably aren't supposed to define something with the word, but this idea that we can be more compassionate by practicing, that our emotions are the thing that drive everything we do. Whatever we are feeling emotionally as a result of the thought we are thinking about the situation. So let's say my teenager comes in and says, Mom, and whatever words come out of her mouth after that kind of a tone, it's like not pleasant. And if my thought is, what a rude, entitled girl, my emotion is judgmental, or maybe it's irritated. And so then all of the actions that come out of that, which are more words typically from me, like a little correction, a little jab, they are fueled, laced with irritation and judgment. She senses that and she's like, ooh, Mom's in fight or flight. I'm in fight or flight. Okay, bring it on. Tug of war. We are doing this today, right? Instead of her saying, Mom, and then whatever. I don't have a great one coming to my mind, but Mom, why are you not doing this or whatever? So if she's saying it like that, or rather, if she says those words, then if I think, wow, she must be really struggling today, and I have compassion, then the response that I give is going to be laced with compassion. And that's the broadcast, so to speak, the emotional broadcast that I'm sending out. And now she gets the opportunity to be in the presence of that emotion, not to mention just all of the things I say are flavored with compassion. And I think compassion tastes way better than irritation. Just goes down like a spoonful of sugar, I mean, it's like so different, not just for her too, but for me. So me understanding that emotions are the fuel to our maturation and action, meaning that emotions are the thing that drive our actions. And also all of the stuff I just said, like realizing that the more I can create an emotional experience of compassion for myself, the more emotional maturity and resilience I create for myself. That helps me take more ownership of my emotional landscape, my emotional world. And so that was fabulous. So now I've learned that emotions are the fuel to my actions, and that mirror neurons are sending out this broadcast, and that, I can question and change my thoughts. It's on a roll. This is all part of Thoughtwork. Giving it to you all, just the truth of what took me years to figure out, just in a little synopsis here. And then I remember learning about developmental psychology from Dr. Neufeld, and that was huge because this corrected a bunch of misnomers I had about children and parenting and what developmentally was appropriate for kids, what emotions were really doing, the meaning and need for attachment, which I had no idea about that. And it's funny because I did study psychology. I did study developmental parts of like what's developmentally appropriate, chemistry, biology when I was going to nursing school, but I had missed putting the pieces together that I did learn. And then Dr. Neufeld's like filled in all of these gaps. So that was really helpful because once I had a clear and accurate understanding of what was happening for my kids, I was able to go back to the process of the thought work and have a different base of understanding, new awareness, new clarity of what was true. And then that was my thought that I was able to eventually install as my new neural pathway so that I could understand how human development and emotions worked properly. So good. So all of these awarenesses helped me understand how to create thoughts more and more deliberately and more accurately, the better information I had informing me of my thoughts. They helped me feel my emotions more deeply, and I was able to create more and more safety, not just for myself, but also for my kids, for my entire life, really, for like all of the things that were happening in my life. And everything began to change. Everything. My life, my parenting, my relationship with my husband, big time up-leveled, relationship with friends. It didn't mean everything was perfect because there were some pretty challenging relationships that came up in the same time period where I was discovering this, but I was able to navigate them better. Not as good as I could do now. I could do so much better now, but those challenges helped me face some of the underdeveloped parts of me so I got even better. So I started feeling better and my behavior became easier to control. I was learning more and more what was influencing my behavior. And then somewhere along the line, my husband started doing these classes for work. Well, they were really these off-day workshop things called Strategic Coach. And sometimes I would tag along. And then I started learning more and more about goal setting. I love goal setting, always from the time I was young, set goals and plan for the future. But Strategic Coach, I wasn't in on the meetings. He would just come tell me about them after the fact. And I would go along sometimes as a little break from the kids. And my mom would come watch the kids, bless her heart, give me a little weekend break. And he would talk to me about the way they were structuring their goals and planning their future, creating this kind of focus and purpose for their life. And that was really helpful. So that's emerged into what is now Peace and my entire Connect Method parenting program. And things began to click. I got STEAR and Daily Peace and the Seen and Heard and limits versus consequences. I feel like all of the learning and the failing and the real life experiences all came together to help me create Connect Method parenting. And thought work is such a big part of Connect Method parenting because if we aren't regulated, it's going to be hard, so hard, if not impossible, to get our kids to get regulated. It's ironic and slightly devastating. I'm not judging myself, but I'm slightly devastated that there were times in my life where I would be clearly upset, clearly not calm, telling my kids to calm down and thinking somehow they're going to get regulated and calm down or they're going to have better behavior. But how? Like, how are they learning that when I can't even do that for myself? You calm down. I'm not calm, but you better calm down. And I think about the mirror neuron sending out the absolute opposite broadcast of what I'm trying to get them to do and how this would never work, obviously. So we have to learn how to regulate our emotions, how to become aware of our thoughts, do this thought work, do the daily peace so that we can be in a regulated state so that we can create what we want with our kids. And I want to say really quick, I have an interesting relationship with the word regulated because the goal isn't to always be regulated. Our nervous systems are meant to get dysregulated sometimes. So what I really mean is we get better at showing up as the best version of ourselves. And when we don't show up as the best version of ourselves, which happens a lot, it just happens because we're humans. But when we don't show up as our best, we become better at repairing. We don't get as dysregulated. And that is what it's about. It's not about perfection. It's about being the best human we can be. So when we are improving how we are able to navigate things, our kids get to improve how they're navigating things. And we can make this happen by the environment or help make it happen by the environment that we're creating for them and us. We set everybody up for success when we're doing this. So when we use the term thought work, what I'm saying is that when we do thought work, we are using a set of tools to see how the world works. And then based on our observations, we decide if we want to change anything or keep things the same. So we're using thought work to see what our current interpretation is of the world. And then based on our observation, we say, yeah, I love that. Love that thought, love that belief, love what it creates for me, keeping it. Or nope, not in love with that result. I'd like to be better. And then we change because we have the ability to literally change our neural pathways, change our thinking, change our triggers, change our personal reality. If we do the work to make that happen, we can make it happen. And when you pay attention to what's going on in your brain and you understand how impactful and what a powerful influence those thoughts are on your life, on your parenting, on your feelings, on your emotions, on your actions, and the results they create in your life, then you start to live from a place where you can observe yourself being yourself, which means you can start changing things if you want to, because you can honestly self-inspect. But no one teaches us that thoughts popping into our brain are something we have control over. At least most of us don't have someone who's taught us that from a young age, but it's the truth. And these thoughts are not just observations of the world. They're not facts. They are our interpretation of the world, and they create this electrical impulse we call emotions that drive our actions and create our results. So all of this we can change. So thought work works because it creates more awareness about our lives and what we're creating in our life. So we pay attention to what's going on in our brain, and then we decide, do we like it or do we not like it? You also start to see what a powerful influence these thoughts, most of which are subconscious, are having on your life, on everything, right? And then you start to live from a place where you can observe yourself being someone else. You start to observe yourself and see the messiness, see the rawness of it. Look without getting triggered at what you just did at bedtime last night and thinking, wow, that was crazy. I lost my cool. Okay. And you come with compassion. You sit quietly. You contemplate. Maybe you meditate. You give yourself space. And you witness yourself being who you're currently being. It's like eavesdropping on yourself. You're listening and observing yourself. And when you do this on a regular basis, you start to realize that you are not at the effect of everything outside of you. You have the ability to witness your brain. And that's huge. You have the ability to witness your brain, to be conscious of what is happening in your life. And that's what thought work does. When you get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper, and whether that's real paper or inside of our app, people type their thought downloads, they do this work. It's the same thing. It's getting it out of your brain, out of just thinking, into a form where you can look at it. And that makes a difference. That is part of the work of observing yourself. Whenever I feel like I don't have time to do my thought work, which I call daily peace, or to sit quietly with myself for just a few minutes, let myself feel what I'm feeling, feel my emotions, see what I'm thinking, just breathe, then I know I really need it. I really need to slow down. The more I think I need to hurry, the more I need to slow down. Typically, if I'm in a hurry, I'm in fight or flight. And that is not the place that I want to create my life from, because I don't create a very intentional life from that place. So having the ability to look at my thoughts, to sit quietly and observe myself, to give myself some space to breathe, to witness what's coming up, reading through that thought download, looking at that unintentional steer and saying, wow, that's me right now. Observe it. And find peace by being conscious of my own consciousness. If I don't feel like I have time for it, then I know I've got to make time for it. And this is something I do regularly. I try to do it every single day. When people work with me, I say, let's do this every day. Every day. If you do it every day, you're going to change your whole entire life. I've seen that over and over again. I have the stats to back it up too. So when people ask me, how does thought work? That's what I tell them. It works because we take that embedded thought system inside of your brain and we change it. We look at it and we change it. It's very simple. You create that relationship with yourself. You decide on purpose what you want to think, and then things start to change. So all of this leads to being more in control of your own behavior, understanding your behavior and thoughts so you can leave room for your kids' behavior and thoughts. That's CMP strategy number 1. That's what we are all about, because without that, you have nothing. If you don't understand why you're getting triggered when the kids don't clean their room or refuse to do their homework, we're not going to make much headway on it. You might be able to change your kids for a bit, but you're really not getting to the root of it, because as soon as they revert back, you're going to revert, because you are just changing external things. If you want to change the root, if you want to be resilient, compassionate, regardless of what your kids are doing, and that doesn't mean passive. You could still set a firm limit, like, hey, got to do homework. They throw a fit, you hold firm, right? You get to explore your capacity. You get to decide to evolve and be kind, helpful, full of service and contribution. You get to learn how to be the person you want to be, a person you respect, You stop feeling that like negative energy gets the best of you, that you're getting pushed around and feel like everything's happening to you. You get to start doing your best. And even if it's not, a 9 out of 10 today or a 10 out of 10, which, I wish we could do 10 out of 10. Not very many of us hit that consistently. It doesn't matter because you're able to get curious instead of critical. You're able to be compassionate towards yourself and learn and grow from everything that happens. You have so much awareness of what's going on that when you do a little back step, so to speak, you learn from it quickly. You realize that you're worthy and 100% lovable, and that no one can take that away from you. No one can take away your ability to decide what you think. Good, right? And the only way you stay locked in a sleepless life is if you don't become aware of what you're thinking and what emotions are coming up, that you don't become aware of how you interact with the world, and that you can create whatever you want. This is the work of mind awareness, the work of observing your thoughts, of understanding that your thoughts create your emotions and how your emotions fuel your actions and how your actions ultimately create your results in your life. Sure, there are situations in life you can't control, but the thoughts in your mind about those situations, those you do have control over. It's going to take some work and practice, but it is within your ability. I believe that one of the most important skills or practices that we can have for ourselves when it comes to parenting is to understand how the brain works, how emotions drive our actions, how the brain is programmed in childhood, and how the programming that we get has shaped how we think and feel and react and the results we're creating. It's so freeing to start to understand this, to have this skill, this awareness, because even if we're still showing up in ways we don't love, we have the awareness that there's an option and that we can work towards it. So this is one of the most, if not the most important skill that as a parent we can develop. And once you get this, you will see that this information has the potential to change your life, your parenting, your child's life, your ability to love yourself, your connection with yourself, with your kids, with your partner, with your mother. And you're going to want to share this with everyone. This has been my work for the past 15 plus years. And as I've developed Connect Method Parenting and gotten it out to more people, it's my passion. It's my passion to help people understand the power of thought work, the power of looking at your own belief systems, and the power of choosing what you want to believe, what emotions are then created, and how to move from activated nervous system to calm nervous system. Thought work doesn't work because of some very strict formula. It works because you're learning how to observe yourself. You're learning to be the watcher of your life. You're learning to think intentionally. You're learning to create new neural pathways. You're learning to create safety. You're learning to release triggers. You're learning to observe yourself. You're learning to create more awareness. And when you do all of this and it becomes part of you, it opens up a new dimension, a new way of life that otherwise you would have no access to, a perspective that otherwise you wouldn't be able to have. So yeah, that's how it works. That's how thought work works. And it's easy to get caught up in the intellectual part of it, switching out this thought for that thought. I did that for a couple of years. It's like, I just need to think a new thought. And although that's true, it's not really that simple. It's about becoming aware of the thoughts I'm having from a compassionate place and using truth, using emotional regulation, using compassion, using correct belief systems to create more accurate thoughts that I want to see the world through. So the reason thought work works is because it gets you more conscious. It causes you to have more awareness. You become aware of yourself. You become more conscious of yourself. And that awareness allows you to come from a place where you're able to make decisions for your highest good and for your kids' highest good. So don't get confused about how it works. Just focus on becoming more aware and present with yourself, because that's really the magic of how thought work works. All right, you all, go connect with your kids. Enjoy this holiday season. Oh, and leave a review for this podcast if you've been enjoying the episodes, or if you just found me and this is your first one, go leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. That would be amazing. I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out League, my Connect Method parenting coaching program. where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.